Welcome back to our special feature interview with Sergeant Layne Morris. Sergeant Morris, you were waiting outside this fortress in Coast Afghanistan with 5 of your Special Forces colleagues. Inside were 5 or 6 men with arms. You didn't know who they were. You waited, then what?
Well, we waited until the main body showed up. And so probably for 45 minutes, we waited, everyone waited, our main body showed up. At that point, we had them outnumbered with 6 more of my team and then another 25 or so Afghan militia forces. And so we had the compound surrounded, and at that point we had gotten our interpreters. And our interpreters thought that they could make some contact with these folks and get them to come out and talk to us. And so they tried for probably a half hour to coax the men inside to come out and speak with us.
Did anyone leave? Did you have a truce? Did you say, if you come out now, we won't shoot you? What were the messages that were transmitted by your interpreters?
Exactly that. We're here to investigate this situation. Come on out and talk to us and let us know what's going on, and let's talk about it. There was an entire village there, so no one had to be afraid that there was going to be something. We were just going to start executing people. There was probably 500 witnesses at that point that could have testified to anything that went on there.
Mm-hmm. And did anyone come out of the fortress upon the appeals of your translators?
No, they refused to come out, would make no contact. And at that point, our interpreter said, well, let us just kind of step inside the gate. There's a wall just inside the gate that we'll be safe behind. And maybe we can talk to them a little better in there without all of the village hearing and listening, and maybe we can discuss this a little better. So we said, okay, we'll try and be as much security for you as possible, but you're going to be vulnerable inside that gate. But they wanted to go, so we allowed them to step inside that gate to try and make better contact.
And what happened then?
Well, they got inside the gate, and they were staying low behind this wall that was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet tall, and started to kind of call out. And as soon as they had called out and kind of made their position known, the guys behind that wall, and by this point the men inside had snuck up to the corner, so they were just over that wall. The other people in the compound, the women and children that were inside, were waiting for a signal. And the signal was when the shooting starts, they were going to leave. So when our interpreters kind of started to call out in Pashtun to try and talk to these men inside, they popped up and just leaned over the wall and shot the interpreters point blank in the head, killing both of them instantly.
Oh my God, those were local Afghan interpreters.
That's correct.
So point blank murder of the interpreters. I take it all hell broke loose at that point, or what happened? Did you refrain from returning fire with the women and children there? What happened?
Well, the women and children hadn't quite made to the gate yet. The men inside, once they had shot the interpreters, turned their rifles on us. Of course, we opened up on them too. So you really had a dangerous situation where you probably had 10 to 12 men all within about 3 feet of each other, all trying to shoot at each other with kind of a wall in between us. And then they were throwing hand grenades over at us, and we were in the open at that point. We returned fire and killed 2 or 3 of them there right at that wall. The rest of them turned, and as the women came running out, we kind of tried to get out of the way of the women and not get shot. The men inside didn't seem to have any concern for the women and children fleeing at all. They never stopped shooting. We had to hold our fire as the women came and children came pouring out of the front gate. So after they had left and hand grenades had been thrown back and forth, the firefight resumed at that point.
Now, tell me about Christopher Speer, a Sergeant First Class just like you. Was he part of your A team, or was he part of the main body of reinforcements?
He was part of the main body of reinforcements that came there just before the firefight started.
And did you know him at all from the base camp?
I had just met him. He had just gotten there a couple of weeks before, so I didn't know Chris very well at all.
I want to ask you to tell me about the ultimate end of this event, because there's so many things I want to talk about, although these details are fascinating. And I put it to you, these stories have not been told in Canada before, about how the terrorists murdered in point blank the interpreters, about how they shot when their own women and children were fleeing. That has never been told before by our consensus media and their narrative. So that's important to hear. But I want you to tell us, once the women and children fled, once the reinforcements were there, how did this firefight end? How did this engagement end?
Well, at that point, it became evident that these guys just wanted to go out in a blaze of glory. They were seeking martyrdom. If they wanted to engage in some type of a military operation, they should have attacked us when we only had 6 guys there. Instead, they waited for the most forces to show up so that they had the best chance of inflicting damage on us on their way out. So they waited till they got point blank. They had as many people there as possible, and then started the firefight. When the firefight continued, we really forced them to the back of the compound just for the volume of fire. And so at that point, there was only 2 or 3 of them left alive. And at that point, we simply retreated and called for some air power to simply bomb the compound into submission. And so we stood back and waited. At that point, I had been wounded. I had taken some grenade shrapnel through my right eye, so I was really out of the fight. I couldn't see with my to shoot right-handed, so I wasn't a whole lot of good. So I just sat back and watched.
Were you still conscious, and you'd taken some shrapnel? That shrapnel, in fact, blinded you in one eye. Is that correct?
That's right. I took some shrapnel through my right eye. It ended up back by my right ear. The shrapnel went through the optic nerve and cut that. So I wasn't, you know, I know it might sound a little bit crazy, but I wasn't severely wounded. I wasn't knocked unconscious. I just couldn't see out of one eye, and made it hard to operate. So
after the air support came in and bombed that place heavy, what happened then? Did the main body go into the fortress to see if there were any survivors? What was the purpose in going in? To check for survivors, check for records? What was the purpose?
All of the above. At that point, I was put on a medevac, and so what was left of the team went into the compound to, just as you say, to exploit whatever intelligence was in there, to check for survivors, and to check it out. And so they did that. Probably after, you know, it was probably a good hour by the time the bombing ended and the team went in there. So Omar had a good hour in there by himself, thinking and considering, what do I do? Would now be a good time to quit, or just what should I do? So the team went in after an hour to check it out.
And tell me what happened.
Well, as they went in, and it was, you know, maybe you've seen from photos, it was just a pile of rubble at that point. And so it was really an investigation to try and see what intelligence they could find through there. So as they were going through the rubble, looking for bodies and looking for intelligence materials, Omar, who was hiding in some of the rubble, when the team got close enough, Omar popped up, shot his pistol at them, and threw the hand grenade.
That was the hand grenade that murdered Sergeant Christopher Speer.
That's correct. The team was surprised, returned fire, hitting Omar several times, and not everyone saw the grenade. And as is procedure, when somebody yells grenade, if you can't locate the grenade, you just hit the dirt. And Chris hit the dirt, but the grenade was too close to him, and he took shrapnel in the head.
When Omar Khadr was finally captured, he was badly wounded. Do you know what he said to his captors, the Americans who stood over him?
Yes, he asked them to kill him. He was belligerent. He wanted to die. He wanted to go out as a martyr, which you know, that whole entire group had been trying to do. Everybody that stayed for the firefight, excluding the women and children who left when the firefight started, everybody there wanted to go out as a martyr. And to the end, Omar Khadr asked for that.
But instead of being shot on the spot, the U.S. flew in an ophthalmologist from Kuwait, ironically to save his eye, while you, sir, were blinded.